Do you know how to negotiate in this time of crisis? Do you know in this particular time, how to bring compassion, how to have curiosity for the others, and especially how to have confidence while you negotiate? Stay with me because this interview to Kwame Christian is going to be amazing, I promise you. Living in harmony is possible if you know your emotions and how to handle them. I am Dr. Carmen Roman, and I will share with you the current psychology by myself or by interviewing experts who will inspire you. Learn how to live a life of fullness and how to recover your emotional harmony. Welcome to Emotions in Harmony. Welcome back, and I am so glad you are here with us in this conversation with Kwame Christian. Kwame Christian has a Juris Doctorate in law and a bachelor degree in psychology, and he puts all of this together to teach us how to negotiate better. He is the director of the American Negotiation Institute, and he conducts workshops all through North America and abroad. He also has his podcast about Negotiate Anything. This is the name of his podcast, Negotiate Everything. And listen to that. His podcast has been downloaded more than 1.5 million, 1.5 million times. Isn't that fun? In 180 countries. Of course, because we love to listen to him. So here it is. Enjoy this professor. He has been adjunct faculty in the Otterbein University, the MBA program, as well as the Ohio State University. So here it is. Enjoy it. So let's start with your topic. I like your topic, negotiating and in this time of crisis.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited for it.
It seems like we are living one crisis and entering into another one, or it comes together, or wow.
Yeah, it's a tough situation.
It's a tough situation. Yeah. My main topic and question is like how we really negotiate when you only have the video camera.
It's challenging. I'll say, first of all, it is I think it's an improvement compared to phone negotiations because you have more context. You can see the person. You can see whether or not they're paying attention to you. You can see their body language to a certain extent. One thing that's a little bit challenging about it is that when you think about the science of body language, the most truthful part of your body is your feet, are your feet. And that's because, yeah. And so when you think about the origins of body language, it's connected with our limbic system. And so that's why it's hard to change your body language before it happens. You can't like stop it from happening, but you can be aware, recognize what you did and pull it back. But it's an automatic thing. That's why if you understand how to read body language, it can be so powerful. And when you think about the fight, flight, freeze response, those fear responses, the majority of the time when we think back way in the day when we were in our kind of primitive forms, we were primarily using our feet to run away or to engage in battle. So usually it's our feet that respond the most. And then if you think about when it comes to honesty versus dishonesty, a lot of times when it comes to dishonesty, we've been taught to lie by people who love us when in our childhood. So for example, Carmen, if you get a gift, let's say 5-year-old Carmen gets a gift and she doesn't like that gift, she says, I don't like this gift. And then your mom says, hey, fix your face. No, say thank you. You like it. Tell them you like
smile.
It.
Yeah.
Right. And so we learn to conceal our emotions with our face, but our legs, our torso, we don't know how to conceal. We don't even think to conceal our body language there. And so it's that element is a little bit more difficult. We can read body language a little bit more effectively than on the phone, but some of the most vital parts of body language are obscured because we can't see much below the torso.
I use it all the time, and I didn't thought about it. I use of course, the feet, the hands, where they put their hands in therapy and how they move their legs. And you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's, again, I think when it comes to negotiating in general, but especially negotiating online, it's important to understand where it can help us and where it can hurt us, and especially the limitations. Because
Yes.
sometimes we think that we can read more into a situation than we really can. And the way I think
Mhm.
about it is in terms of data points. If I can only see this part of your body, it's a limited amount of data that I can pull from that interaction too. So I'm not as confident in my reads in body language as I would be in person, but I'm significantly more confident than I would be on the phone or via email.
Yes, that's true. What are the points that we need to consider when we are negotiating in crisis? One, when this particular crisis, but this applies to other crises as well.
hmm I think the thing to recognize when we're negotiating in crisis is that it's not just us who are in crisis. The person with whom we're negotiating, they're in
Yeah.
crisis as well. And sometimes we're so focused on what it is we want and need and what we're going through that we don't take the time to acknowledge what the other side is going through. And so, one of the most
Mhm.
important things we need to do is take the time and acknowledge the emotions and barriers and frustrations of the other side. And so, I talk about it all the time. It's the compassionate curiosity framework that I made for my book, Nobody Will Play With Me. And so, step one, acknowledge and validate emotions. Step two, get curious with compassion. And step three, engage in joint problem solving. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be a lot more successful in these difficult conversations. But first, acknowledge the fact that the person on the other side is struggling too. Just say, it sounds like this has been a really tough situation for you. It seems as though this crisis has had a significant impact on your business. And just taking the time to acknowledge that will make them more receptive of whatever it is you have to say next.
Also, during this time of crisis, it has been the question a lot in other countries, especially for me in Mexico and here in the United States, is how we do business when feeling like almost like taking advantage because people has no income, no money, or there are financial struggles in all over the country. How we do business. I personally don't have an issue because it's my business to make people feel better, but I read a lot in social media about that. How
Right.
you sell
I think it's
something,
tough.
how
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
How do you sell something?
I think what we have to do is we need to be a little bit more curious about what the situation is on the other side. And so if we're in this conversation where we're trying to see if we can sell something, we want to ask some questions about their situation. How has COVID impacted them? And even as we start to turn the corner and start to open up the economy again, uh, there's still a rebound. It's taking time. It will take some
Mhm.
time. And so there's going to be a prolonged impact economically. And so I think as we go into these conversations, we need to be, again, more curious and ask better questions. So, how have you been doing? Just open up very broadly. Okay, what impact has this had on your business? What changes have you had to make? And based on the responses that they give you, you're starting to get an idea of what it is that they need and what it is that they can afford and those type of things. But
Mhm.
one of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing people make right now is assuming that nobody has money. I talk to my friends all the time, and
Mhm.
we joke about the fact that as we drive through the neighborhood, we're seeing more Amazon deliveries than ever before. People are spending money.
Yes.
We just have to be there as a valid and valuable solution for when they're ready to. So keep on having those conversations, learning what they need, and then try to figure out a way to solve their problems with your product or service.
I hear a case in Mexico that somebody used to do quinceañera parties, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they start moving into, of course, video quinceañera parties, and they start moving into funeral video recordings services.
Mm.
So they are surviving and thriving because they just being creative. Yeah, they start asking what people need.
Exactly. And so you have to
Mm-hmm.
blend that need with the product or
Uh-huh.
service and then deliver it in a way that
Mm-hmm.
is in line with the new health concerns of today, right?
Yes.
And like you said, creativity is key. And if you're creative enough, you can start to find ways to solve those problems. One thing a lot of companies are doing now, and I've started to do too, is find different stratifications for their pricing points. So maybe they might have just had premier products or services. Okay, great. Now I realize that the situation has changed. What I need to do is I need to create different tiers of pricing so I can hit more people. And so, of course, you don't want to overwhelm people with options, because you run into what's called the paradox of choice, where the more options that people are presented with, the less likely they are to choose an option at all. And so you don't want to overwhelm people, but you can create new pricing points where you can offer a solution and give value at a price that they can work with.
Wow, thank you, Kwame, because it's kind of, you are giving us permission to, to kind of organize our services. Yeah. Because another fear that I keep listening is how I can lower my services when in the times that I actually need more income. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the question is, you have to look into the future and ask yourself, okay, if I start to create this habit with these particular clients at this pricing point, what does it look like as I project this into the future? That's something you have to you have to consider. Are you lowering your market price? One thing I would say is, if you find yourself in a position where you have to get income, we need money to survive, right? If you find yourself in that position, don't try as much as possible to not find yourself in a position where you are offering the exact same thing, but at a lower price. So if the price goes down, the value that you give has to go down a commensurate amount. And so if you were providing a premier service before, where you might do 3 things, for example, if they say, I can't afford that, then you say, okay, can you do 2 things for this price? Nope. Can you do 1 thing for this price? And so then when things get better and they want to add those 2 things back, you can just raise the price back up. Instead, if you do it the opposite way and say, I'm still going to do these 3 things, but at the price of 1 thing, now you're in a situation where when the market gets back, you say, hey, we're going back to that premium price. They're like, no, I'm used to paying this much for this much, right?
Talking to people in business in another country, in Latino countries, is going around the belief, I think they are developing that belief, that people should do things for free now. Please talk to us, because this is dangerous.
Yes. So I will answer in Spanish. Should you start doing things for free? And the answer in Spanish is no.
No.
Okay. So yeah, you can't just give away the things that you had that were paid for free. But what you can do is you can be creative about adding value to the lives of others in a way that is very, very scalable for free, as a way to raise your status in the market. So what's the difference? Those things seem very similar. So what is the difference? So I'll use me as an example. So when COVID hit, I had a calendar that was full of events. But from the middle of March to the end of July, every single one of my in-person events were canceled. And so it was tough, because I remember having this conversation in February. I said, hey, should I get a bigger office? We have a bigger staff. Should I get that? Yeah, absolutely. Duh, I should get it. And after I got it, I said, see, it was just fear that was holding me back. And then COVID hit. I'm like, no, I'm in a contract. And so I had to be creative. And so what I did was I put on this summit. And the summit was to gather people together and share ideas on how to have difficult conversations online, over the phone, and via email. And so it wasn't me presenting something for free. It wasn't a free training. What it was me giving a quick 10-minute little dialogue on things that they can do in terms of best practices, and then putting them into breakout rooms in Zoom so they can have discussions for themselves. And then when they had those discussions, they sent us the notes and we compiled this document for them. And so during that process, I was able to increase my email list almost to 1,000, like almost 1,000 more than what we had before. which is significant because now we have more people that we can market to for future promotion. And so it was a bit of a quid pro quo. So I gave them value through this service that didn't really cost me much to do at all. But at the same time, they gave me their emails, which allows me to market to them in the future. So when, again, times are better, I have a bigger audience to market to. So be creative about adding value. You still want to add value, but you don't want to give away something that you were previously charging for free.
I want to, talking to you is like bringing pieces of gold in terms of business and negotiation and compassionate conversations. It truly is. Every time I talk to you, I really take these pieces of gold.
Thank you.
And what I noticed, Kwame, during this time of difficult times, and I work with people, I have 20-something years working with people on difficult times. Yeah. They come with me when they are severe trauma or anxiety or depression. What I notice is that people who are creative, who were doing good before, they are going to do good anyway. And what you are describing is you adapt, you move. Yeah. You keep adapting and moving. Tell me, what is in your brain? Tell me, what is it that when you wake up, what do you say to yourself? How do you move? When you face this wall, like, okay, I just did a contract. Oh my God, like I shouldn't. Yeah. How do you move from that?
Yeah. And here's the thing. We are trained, not even trained. We're not trained. This is innate. We are innately focused on the negative things. What is the biggest threat? The fact that I'm not making as much money is a big threat. The fact that I'm afraid that I can't pay my bills, those are a big threat. And so the problem with that is that we're not recognizing the opportunity. And so when you think about my approach to difficult conversations, the way I always say it is conflict is an opportunity. And when you think about it as an opportunity, you start to think creatively about it, and it leads you to be more likely to engage in the difficult conversation that you are trying to avoid. Similarly, in business, when you see these difficult situations, you have to think about it as an opportunity. You have to ask yourself, where is the opportunity? And everybody that I was talking to about business, I made sure to say this, not just to send the message to them, but also to reiterate it to myself that I will find a way to make this crisis the very best thing that ever happened to my company. And my revenue went down to almost zero, right? When all of these things were canceled. But I said, I'm going to find a way to make this the best thing, not just survive, but the best thing. And when I was thinking about it in that way, it forced me to be creative because I wasn't just thinking about how can I just scrape my way back to where I was. It forced me to say, no, if this is going to be the best thing, what do I need to do in order to make it the best thing? And when you think that way, now you can find new solutions because you're looking for them. The problem is usually we're just not looking for them.
So thinking, this is the best thing that is going to happen to me.
Exactly. And it's the way that I look at it, Carmen, I say to myself, I am the author of my own story. Every month, every day, every week, it's a new chapter, it's a new sentence, it's a new line, it's a new paragraph in that story. And so if I'm writing this book, I'm going to win. I'm not going to say, Kwame got hit by this and then he was done forever. Why would I write that for myself? It's Kwame got hit by this situation, then he figured it out. Oh, how do I figure it out? Okay, as I'm writing the lines, as I'm living the life.
See, this is why I want to peek into your brain because I guess you have so much fun with your own brain.
Oh yeah. I tell you, the deeper you start to look into yourself, the more interesting things you find. Sometimes it's a bit scary, but usually you can turn it into something good.
I told to my team at the very beginning of the COVID, I told to my team, this is going to be very good for us. Yeah. This is going to be very good. We need to prepare and work hard. And I don't think so I let my team to rest at all. Like, let's do it. And it has been really the good thing for us. It has really good. But now that you are telling me that, I understand. It's like, you're right. It's working. It's growing in our own lives. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think it's just a powerful mindset. And it makes me think about these challenges a lot more differently. Because when I say, okay, I'm going to win, I have to say, well, where is it? I'm not seeing a victory here. I'm not seeing a victory here. And you have to consider the messages that you're absorbing from other people. Because the more that you absorb these messages, the more is going to be a part of you. You might not be sending those messages, but you're certainly receiving them. It's almost like sitting in the room with somebody who's smoking. You're absorbing secondhand smoke. You're not smoking, but just being there and allowing yourself to be present and absorb those things is going to have an impact on you. And so when I think about some of my friends and people who are posting constantly on social media, they have these jokes about how this COVID-19 situation and the lockdown has made them so lazy about how much content they're consuming. I'm watching Netflix all the time. I'm just sitting down. I'm being lazy. And I will admit they are very funny posts, very, very funny posts. But you have to think about the impact it's having on you. So you have to realize when everybody else is saying, they're sending this message, what they're saying is that that mediocrity is okay. That during this time, you're on a stay-at-home vacation where your only job is to consume and not produce. And so instead, I said, listen, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to think about this in terms of a race. While everybody else is sitting down, I'm going to keep pushing forward. And if possible, I'm going to try to push forward harder and start to position myself better, because we're not going to be in this situation forever. There's never been a time where we've been stuck in the same economic downturn forever. So once the faucet turns back on, I want to be ready. And so if I was here when we started this, I want to be significantly further ahead. So when the faucet turns back on, we're ready to go.
My 14-year-old niece, I grew up in a very poor area in Guadalajara, in Mexico, and my family is still there. And my 14-year-old niece started sleeping late. Yeah, because it's like staycation.
Right.
And I told to her she wouldn't wake up before 1 or 3 p.m. And I told to her, and I say, there is a difference. People who want to do better and leave that place of living needs to wake up at 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, have exercise. I explained to her, and you can do it or not do it. And she's doing it now. But sometimes we need to be told like that. We need to be explained like that, Kwame.
Absolutely. And I think there was an expert way of expressing that I think you take for granted because you're such an expert in this. But for the people who are listening, I want to really break that down, because you said you can do whatever you want. But if you want to have this result, you should do that. And what we have to recognize is that unless we're their parents, we can't force anybody to do anything. And if we approach a conversation in a way where we're trying to force somebody to do something that they don't want to do, even if they agree with you, they're going to feel compelled to resist because they want to assert themselves as a respected adult in the situation. But if you say, you can do what you want to do, now you have circumvented, you've gone around that desire to resist and said, yeah, that's right. I can do what I want to do. Now that you explained it to me, I want to do what you just told me to do.
So tell for our listeners how the other side, if we are negotiating and we know, and we are being a little bit better knowing about compassionate or whatever, how we negotiate when somebody that is in the other side, how we take care of the other part.
Yeah. And so I think what we have to recognize is that the more we help others, the more they're going to want to help us. And so if we go into these conversations just focused on our own needs, we're going to fail. People don't want to help selfish people. That's really what it is. And so we have to really demonstrate the fact that we actually care about their outcomes as well. What is important to you? What problems are you experiencing? How can I help? And that's when we transition then to the joint problem solving stage, where we're brainstorming different solutions that could work for you and work for me. And so I think it's really important to be mindful of the fact that the only way to victory in these conversations is by helping other people to accomplish their goals. Because if they just see you as somebody who is a taker, where I'm just here to help Carmen, that's all that I'm here for, well, no, then I'm not going to help Carmen. If they see that you actually care and are invested in their outcomes, then they're going to be more flexible. And I think it's easier to get people to believe this if you have invested in the relationship for the long term. Have you talked to them outside of business? Have you reached out to them when there wasn't a crisis, when you didn't need something? Sometimes we're that person who just reaches out when we need something. People recognize that pattern and it doesn't feel good. So we need to continue to touch base with people and reach out and learn and cultivate that relationship, because it makes it more likely that we're going to achieve success down the road when we actually do need something.
My question comes from that we prepare a workshop for cleaners, house cleaners. And one part of the workshop was how to charge now that you are going back, because houses are a little dirty. They didn't clean for all of these months deeply, or now needs to be disinfected and all of these things. But I did an episode for the ones who hire the cleaners, because if you care to pay during this time for that cleaner that probably is undocumented, that probably has no other income because it was only cleaning houses, and we learn a lot. Some people say, just, I am going to pay you 100%, stay at your home with your kids, be safe, see you when this ends. And there are way others, the whole spectrum. So this is, my question comes from that, is like, yes, when you negotiate, you are also negotiating the long term. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And consider this. Think about the unique opportunities, because now you have a potential new service. Now you have a deep clean that is specifically tailored to the fact that we are in a pandemic. So the typical cleaning that I would have done for you before is now irrelevant. So you could pay me what you did before, or you could pay me more for this new level of deep cleaning where we disinfect everything. So that's an actual economic opportunity. And also consider that the people who are in a financial position to have people come in and clean their houses, and they are willing to restart that, most likely they are the types of people who are not severely impacted by the crisis financially. And so they don't need a discount in this situation. And so if they ask you for a discount, what I would do is I would reframe it. You would say, now the job that I did before is very different than the job that I'm doing today. I have a higher service offering. That's one. If you don't want that, that's fine. But what I cannot charge you less for what we did before, because now there is a significantly higher risk of exposure because I'm in a different environment. And so I would almost frame it as, my newer customers are paying a higher rate because it's more dangerous. But for you, I'm giving you a discount, which is what we had before, because it's significantly more dangerous right now.
I wish you can go with every woman there and do the negotiation. Kwame, tell us about your book. Tell us.
So
it's new? Is it a new book?
It's 2017, but I'm going to rebrand it. Actually, this is breaking news. You're the first person I'm telling this publicly.
Thank you.
So the book is, this is a video podcast. You're going to post a video too, right? Okay.
Yes.
So
this is why I see the book there.
Yeah, you see the branding, right?
Yeah.
So the book is called Nobody Will Play With Me, How to Find Confidence in Conflict. And what I'm recognizing is that the people who know me, who are in my audience or familiar with my work, they understand what the book is about. They understand it's about negotiation and conflict resolution. But for the people who don't know me, a negotiation book called Nobody Will Play With Me, pass. I'll go with something else. And so I'm going to rebrand the book's title to Finding Confidence in Conflict, How to Negotiate Your Way to a Better Life. Makes it abundantly clear what the person's going to get. And then Nobody Will Play With Me, that chapter in the book that talks about my experience on the playground where nobody would play with me and how that turned me into a people pleaser. Now that becomes chapter 1. And so people are going to be already invested by that time. And so Yeah, so the book is just about how you can improve your outcomes in these difficult conversations and how you can get a better understanding of what your personal, emotional, and psychological barriers are to difficult conversations. Because everybody has different backgrounds. And for you, of course, as a therapist, you know everybody has different psychological makeups. And so this book helps you to explore that for yourself and recognize what your different points of failure are so you can create a custom strategy for yourself and overcome those fears and have those difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, thank you.
You are putting now all this new experience that you are acquiring, yeah.
Yeah,
In the next
absolutely.
phase.
And I think it comes down to sharing, because my motto is the best things in life are on the other side of difficult conversations. And that's my guiding principle, because for me, when I think about it that way, I feel a calling, I feel a sense of obligation, a duty to share this message as far and wide as possible. Because if I do that, I'm helping people to live the best versions of their life.
You really are. You really are, Kwame, because just like the example of the house cleaners that you just answered to me is, if they negotiate, if everybody, we negotiate better and more compassionate ways, we all win.
Exactly.
We all win, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I want to just say, when it comes to these conversations, you have to have them. You can't avoid them. And avoidance is not a long-term strategy. I call that the hope-based strategy for persuasion, where you just avoid the conversation and then hope it disappears. That's not good enough. You have to be proactive and engage in the conversations to try to improve your circumstances. And the thing is, it's not that difficult. Like, when you think about the framework, acknowledging emotions, getting curious with compassion, joint problem solving, we make it really easy. All you need to do is go through the steps. And then if you see emotions, then you go back to acknowledging emotions. You're really flexible with it. And that's what makes it so powerful. You can use it at work and at home to resolve those conflicts and get better outcomes in the negotiations you're having.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you. I don't want to take more of your time. I know you have like tons of things to do.
Well, this was a fun way to spend some time, though. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. And thanks again for having me on.
Tell me about your podcast so people can go and find your podcast.
Yes, thank you. So the podcast is called Negotiate Anything. It's the top ranked negotiation podcast in the world. And we talk about how to have these difficult conversations. And the title is intentional, Negotiating Anything. We talk about everything. So it's business negotiations, negotiations with colleagues at work, negotiations with your family at home, all of those things, because I want people to recognize that whenever we're having these conversations, whenever you're talking to somebody and you're moving people, you want them to change their behavior in some kind of way or change their perspective in some kind of way. Really, you're negotiating. And then once you recognize you're negotiating more often, you're going to have better outcomes in those negotiations. So in that show, we just try to give you practical tools that you can use. And my goal is to not have you sit down after the fact and have to sift through theories that are not very helpful. I want you to be able to listen to an episode and immediately execute in your next difficult conversation by keeping it simple and practical for the audience.
Yeah, I have been listening to a couple episodes. To tell you the truth, not now because I'm not driving. But But before, when I drive, is my favorite thing. I put in my driving the interviews that you have been doing. I think it's true. I didn't put it that way until now. You say, but you kind of, is one episode. It really finished something. It really has the feeling that you have a skill when you finish the.
That's great. Thank you. That's the goal.
That's the goal. Okay, so thank you for being here in our podcast, and thank you for everything that you do. Your newsletter, I'm sure, is very interesting. So if people want to join your newsletter, where they can find you, or
yeah, so if you can go to AmericanNegotiationInstitute.com/guide, you can get a number of free negotiation guides, actually. And you'll be interested in this. I have an intern from Buenos Aires, and he's going to translate those guides into Spanish. So that's coming soon.
Thank you, Kwame. Yeah,
My pleasure.
Need everything that you can do in Spanish. We need it.
Yes. Well, let me promise you this. So,
Yes.
Soon, cuando yo puedo tener mis lecciones, mis clases en español otra vez, yo voy a invitarte a mi programa, y en este episodio vamos a compartir nuestros guides. That's right?
Guías.
You say guías. That's it.
Yes.
For the audience. So that'll be the coming out party for those Spanish guides.
Well, whoever wants to listen in Spanish, we have an episode of you in Spanish.
That's right. Yes. And when they listen to that episode, they'll know that I'm muy oxidado. So
actually, it was good. We moved it into the Armonía Emocional podcast because, and I think we have it in 2 podcasts now.
Very nice. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I'll check that out. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kwame, and thank you for the time that you are spending with us. People will find you, I'm sure, and people will love you as much as we do in Emotions in Harmony.
Thank you very much.
All the links, if you are driving, maybe in the future, if you are driving and you will listen to this, all these links, information, and everything is in the show notes. So no need to take notes. It's there. You just go there and click and everything. Okay?
Fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye for now. We have reached the end of another episode of the podcast Emotions in Harmony. See you the next week. Visit www.emotionsinharmony.org, where you can subscribe, find the notes, and be in direct contact with me. Thanks for listening.